Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss should absolutely be active in the spring transfer portal window, but not because of what you think.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast around. I am your host, Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media and a former Ole Miss staff member. Today's show, we talk about how Lane Kiffin is setting the stage for a very consequential spring transfer portal window, one where he may be quite active, if we're going to be honest. The staff is always focused on improving the roster at every opportunity, and according to Pick Six previews, Ole Miss is one of only 6 programs in the country to finish in the top 25 in both high school recruiting and portal recruiting each of the last 3 years. In the SEC, only Oklahoma actually joins that list in this elite company. Kiffin has specifically mentioned the defensive backfield as an area they're looking to upgrade, but that's likely not the only position of interest. Former LSU transfer Xavier Hill has left Memphis, and the Olive Branch native is looking for his next home. Could he be on the Rebels' radar? Remember, we're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. And a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make this show what it is. And don't forget to check out a second listen on the network. Chris Gordy at Locked On SEC or Corey Burton at Locked On Vandy offer even more perspectives on college football, the SEC, and even Ole Miss. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when that first $5 bet wins. So we're going to do a little portal gossip today on this show. Only 2 shows, counting this one, until my hiatus for my surgery. And that's just surreal if we're going to be completely honest about it. Hey, do me a favor and watch every single video that's on this channel. It doesn't have to watch it, just play it. The view would be very helpful. Hit us up on the podcast channels as well. Rate, review, subscribe, all of that good stuff. We would appreciate that as well. All of that is going to help out during my recovery, which should be somewhere between 3 weeks and 6 weeks, is that kind of that sweet spot, that Goldilocks zone of where I am looking at. I've done 8 evergreens on why I hate each of the 8 SEC schools that Ole Miss has to play. We've got Brian Smith, the Florida football scout. He's going to be doing shows on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And also, Locked On SEC hosts have agreed to do shows for me as needed for extra content as well. I'm trying to make this as smooth of a transition as possible, but I do understand all of you Loomers, and thank you so much for joining us, that it's going to disrupt you a little bit as well. Now, granted, we are in the second content trough. We are in the second content cliff to where it just kind of falls off after March Madness, and it goes until basically the All-Star break in baseball. So that's one of the reasons that, like, David Johnson had his surgery. I'm having my surgery is because this is the time where the least amount of damage can be done. So tune in, do all of that stuff. We'd appreciate that very much. And let's get started. This transfer portal window in the spring, 4 weeks ago, I thought this window might be a little bit dead for Ole Miss, to where you're going after a defensive back or two, but that's really about it. And the more that I look at this window and the more that goes on, the more I'm not quite sure that that's going to happen. Lane Kiffin as a coach has shown the ability to improve his roster at every single opportunity. Why would he not take advantage of the spring transfer portal window as well? And with all the uncertainty with the House rulings and all of that stuff, this transfer portal could be unusually active, because there's the last chance for you to really cash in financially before the House settlement takes effect, because the NCAA desperately wants the House settlement to take effect, because whenever it does, there is a little bit of price controls that are baked in. But before that settlement gets done, there's a chance for a lot of people to make a lot of money. If you look at what's happening in college basketball right now, $2.5, $3 million for a point guard. I mean, there is a little bit of desperation getting in and trying to get in and get players before the house settlement, when NIL collectives and schools and payments, like I said, there might be a little bit more controls on what's going on. So Lane Kiffin has shown the ability to build the roster each and every portal window. And if this house settlement goes a little bit longer, and it doesn't have to go long, if it just goes a month and a half longer, by the time I get back, if that happens, Lane Kiffin has a chance to add several players and improve his roster. Now, one player that hit the transfer portal recently is Xavier Hill. He's an offensive lineman from the University of Memphis, and he transferred to Memphis from LSU. Now, he is interesting, and everybody's going to say, well, what about Diego Pounds? And what about Jaden Williams? Those guys. Well, those guys are starters. Those guys are in a position to be a dominant player with what's going on. But you don't just stop recruiting if you have two. You need depth. You need a situation. Jaden Williams, when Ole Miss went into the game against Georgia in 2023, was the starting left tackle. And in that game, before it got in, or like a series in, he got injured to where both tackles for Ole Miss in that game were out. So Ole Miss was already at a talent disadvantage with Georgia, and now you're going at it without both of your talents. You need depth. Victor Kern in that game played valiantly, and that lets me know that they see the value and the depth that could go in there. They probably look at spring practice and are not sure of what could happen. Listen, Xavier Hill played a little bit of left guard in college. He's also a right tackle. Right tackle is important. I've talked about this several times with Austin Simmons. The right tackle becomes the new left tackle. So left guard, right tackle, he would kind of be a fit for what Ole Miss needs to do and would make the offensive line a little bit better. When you add Patrick Kutas in at right guard, you add a right tackle of either Jaden Williams or Xavier Hill, and whoever doesn't win that tackle role can play left guard. And all of a sudden you're set on the offensive line with two guys that were recruited as left tackles, Xavier Hill, who's very good on the right side, but can also play inside. Patrick Kutas was the best offensive lineman at Arkansas a year ago. The offensive line would be in pretty good shape. And Xavier Hill is from originally Olive Branch. Yes, he is that player that went down to Ed Orgeron in 2020, whenever that happened. And Xavier Hill ended up transferring out whenever Brian Kelly got the job at LSU and has been an all-conference level performer for Memphis over the last couple of years. So this is going to make him a very, very attractive prospect. He has nearly 2,000 career snaps that he has played on the offensive line. This is an elite offensive player that if you can get him, you get him. Because if you don't, somebody else likely will that you are competing against, and that is what is scary in this situation. Xavier Hill is a very good player. Now, like I said, I got a text message right before I started recording. It's like Xavier Hill, remember that name for the spring transfer portal, listed the number of snaps that he played as well. Just completely unprompted. Whenever stuff like that happens, I pay attention. I got one of those texts a year ago with Princely Amon Mielon. Started really paying attention. I was ahead by about a week before that even developed. So we will pay attention whenever he hits the portal. But Xavier Hill, really good player. And if he came to Ole Miss on the offensive line, that offense could take a step. When you look at Diego Pounds, Xavier Hill, Bryson Sanders, Patrick Kutas, and then Jaden Williams. So that's a lot of football that has been played on that offensive line. And with the skill position players that they have at wide receiver and their running back room could be better. And their tight ends are going to be their tight end room is going to be a lot bigger and a lot better. And Austin Simmons, like I said, is a 1-1 level quarterback. This offense has a chance to be pretty special over the course of 2025. Now, There are questions about the defense, and rightfully so, if we're going to be honest about that. But those questions can be answered by defensive back Tavoy Feagin. He's suddenly on everyone's radar thanks to a clue in an Austin Simmons Instagram story. I'll explain all that buzz next. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel are giving customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you bet $5 with FanDuel and win, you can win $250 in bonus bets. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or kind of diving into player props, from three-pointers to steals to assists. FanDuel has so many ways to bet on your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can combine those prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to really win big. So do not miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. So Ole Miss is going to be recruiting the defensive backfield, and there's a couple of players that can kind of help out what's going on. When you look at Ole Miss's defensive backfield, I really like Keon Young, Cortez Thomas, and LaDarian Clardy. That nucleus of young players, one of them has a chance to be on the field a lot this year. I just don't know which one. I've seen Keon Young in person. I've seen Cortez Thomas in person. I have not laid eyes directly on LaDarian Clardy. But one of those players have a chance to be on the field. Ole Miss picked up Sage Ryan, defensive back from LSU. He's playing a lot of free safety as the spring goes on, and I think he's going to end up there. He's a guy that could be a pretty good free safety. He's somebody that played a lot of corner, a lot of slot corner at LSU, but he might transition, much like John Saunders, to one of the safety positions in Pete Golding's defense. And then you have Antonio Kite, who's a player that Ole Miss picked up in the first transfer portal window. He's originally an Alabama signee, transferred to Auburn, and then transferred out to Ole Miss. He's a guy that if he arrives in May, in June, has a chance to pick up the offense or defense pretty quick, and he could be another safety type player. He's another player with excellent cover skills that whenever he's allowed to go, he's kind of allowed to go. So those are the big names in the middle of the defense. And when you look at actual cornerback positions, you have Jalen Braxton, the cornerback from Arkansas, has a chance to be really good, by the way. He was a freshman all-SEC player, and he got hurt as a sophomore. That's what's going on with him. And then you have Chris Graves and Cedric Beavers and TJ Banks, a lot of young players that Ole Miss has developed. So it's not a dearth of talent for Ole Miss on the back seven, but there's a lot of unproven talent on the back seven. And there's always an opportunity to add talent to that room. And right now, a player, let's see, Tavoy Feagin out of Tampa, Florida, is going into the transfer portal, transferring away from Clemson. This is a player that was a top 100 high school player. He was an Under Armour All-America player, transferred to Clemson, redshirted this season for whatever reason. I don't know why, don't know the ins and outs of the Clemson program. But he redshirted this season, and now he's looking to transfer as well. I think they need to do away with red shirts if we're just going to be honest about it, because all a red shirt is an invitation for a person to transfer. They just need to make 5 years of eligibility a constant, have 1 year of an injury, extra eligibility, and stop it. No more of these 8-year eligible, 9-year eligible type players. I joke around all the time that eligibility is a myth, and right now it's an absolute myth. But Tavoy Feagin, really good player. He's kind of like in that Chris Graves mode of what's going on with him. Chris Graves, I think, transferred from Miami, but TJ Daugherty transferred from the Clemson Tigers ahead of the time before he got there. So there's not really a relationship there. They just happened to transfer from the same place. But Feagin's popped up and has said he would announce for the transfer portal, and immediately Austin Simmons started posting Instagram stories and sharks and all of that. And it lets you know that he's on the radar a little bit. He's a name worth paying attention to. When Ole Miss is looking for defensive backs, here's a guy that has all the talent in the world. If Ole Miss can break it out of him, he'll be good to go. And with Brian Brown on the back end of that defense and Wes Neighbors and Pete Golding and everybody on the defensive staff for Ole Miss, which is a really, really good staff, I could see them turning Feagins into somebody that contributes in year one. And we'll see exactly how that goes. Clemson's recruited high school fairly well. You know, we give Dabo Sweeney a little bit of grief, but he's recruited pretty well. It hasn't always worked out, but that's not necessarily his fault. So we will see how that goes with him. Would he come in and be recruited as a safety? Would he come in and be recruited as a corner like Chris Graves? Would he learn? Would he get on the field immediately? I do think that this season has a chance to be a Cedric Beavers season, to where he just kind of appears against Georgia State and he's just in the lineup and the field corner for the better part of the season, the boundary corner, Jalen Bryant. I think that is the plan. But TJ Banks is a really good player. The defensive back at Alabama got some snaps against the Duke Blue Devils in the Gator Bowl. And then the young guys. I'm curious to see. Like I said, Keon Young in the Under Armour All-American, you can see the ball skills. You can see the football IQ. You can see it all and how he could react at a higher, faster level than other players that were in the game. And Cortez Thomas was on another team in the Under Armour All-American game in kind of the same way. In other words, Pete Golding has a type. And if whoever picks up that defense and doesn't bust, because the reality is on this football team, if you bust, you don't play. You need to understand what is going on. They'll let you make a mistake, but they won't let you keep making that mistake. And if you just keep hurting the team and keep putting them behind the eight ball, you're not going to end up on the field. You're going to end up transferring away. You're going to end up playing football at Middle Tennessee State University, someplace like that, if you make mistakes against whoever you're going against. Everybody remember J.J. Henry? J.J. Henry had a really good fall camp, showed up on the field in the opening game and was getting reps, but he got the dropsies. A couple of passes that hit his hands in the end zone fell out of his hands. He stopped playing. Everybody remember Michael Trigg? Michael Trigg caught the winning touchdown pass essentially against the Tulane Green Wave in 2023. Everybody forgets that Michael Trigg was on that team. Do you know why? Well, the next week or the week after, Ole Miss faced Georgia Tech, and Michael Trigg dropped a wide open touchdown pass. Michael Trigg, later on in that week, more headache than was worth, Ole Miss cut ties with him. If you mess up, if you constantly put the team behind the eight ball, you do not get paid. Or paid, you not get played either. So we'll see exactly how that goes. But whenever you look at Tavoy Feagin, he's a good time player, and we'll see what happens. I think Cedric Beavers has a chance to lock down that field corner position. I know he was injured for most of last season. That's the reason he wasn't on the field. But this season, there's a chance for him to get a lot of reps and to make a lot of plays. I like Cedric Beavers as a football player. When we come back, we will switch gears a little bit and talk about basketball. A former 5-star with Chris Beard ties just entered the transfer portal. This could be a major target. Stay tuned. All right, well, welcome back. Let's turn our attention to the spring transfer portal window for Chris Beard and the Ole Miss Rebels. Pop Isaacs went to the Houston Cougars. That tells me that they just couldn't get over something with his medical history and with those surgeries, especially when you're paying $1 million potentially for a player. Due diligence is required, and it just isn't a, hey, let's take this guy and see what happens type thing. But he is not all. Corey Chest remains the first transfer portal signing for Ole Miss. But Cincinnati forward Dillon Mitchell has planned to enter the transfer portal. When he does, he is a name that you probably need to pay attention to. He is a guy that was a former 5-star at Texas, recruited by Chris Beard, and started nearly every game for Chris Beard. I think he started all but one or something like that. Once he transferred to Cincinnati, he averaged 10 points a game and nearly 7 rebounds. He athletically matches up a lot like Corey Chest. He's a similar type player, similar type free throw shooter as well. But those type of jumping jacks are really interesting to see as Chris Beard continues to try and build his program. No super guards have transferred to Ole Miss. No really super scorers have transferred to Ole Miss, but some athletic guys that could be role players have transferred to Ole Miss, and Dillon Mitchell could be the next one. And like I said, this is this gossip of a whole bunch of people talking about it because of his ties to Chris Beard. That's all it is at the moment. We don't even know if Ole Miss is really interested in him. Everybody is making assumptions, just like they always do when a player enters the transfer portal. But Cincinnati forward Dillon Mitchell is planning to enter the transfer portal for himself. Now, will Chris Beard go after him? I think he might. I think he will reach out to him. I think he'd probably send a tweet or something to see his conversations happen, because he's a really good player and he can provide something that Corey Chest provides a little bit of. But when you add a big three in the front court of a Dillon Mitchell and a Corey Chest and a Malik Dia, all of a sudden you have one of the more athletic front courts in the entire country. And you can focus on your guards at that point. And if you find 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" guards that are really good, which, you know, I get that those guys don't grow on trees, but if you can find those guys, this basketball team really starts to look like it's in the image of Chris Beard. And once it gets to the level that it needs to be at, this team has a chance to be really good. And we've seen the best part of the basketball team with wins over Alabama, wins over Kentucky and Tennessee, decimation against Iowa State, beating North Carolina like a drum pretty much as well. This basketball team at its best, and Chris Beard at its best, really knows what he's doing. And I'm pretty fired up about that. All right. One more time. I have one more show after this one in the pre-surgery lead up. So bear with me a little bit. I'm almost done with all of this stuff as well. But Brian Smith, the Florida football scout, will start hosting Monday, Wednesday, and Friday starting next week. He is scheduled right now for a month of doing that. I'm planning on somewhere between 3 and 6 weeks to be out with my brain surgery. So I'll appreciate everybody's thoughts and prayers. It is a fairly major operation, and there is a significant amount of risk in this surgery, not for death, but for other stuff. But whenever we're recovering for that, I like to know that this channel is taken care of, because this channel means more to me than, other than my wife and my family, pretty much everything else. So do me a favor. Watch every video that comes over this channel. Listen to every podcast on the podcast channels, whether Spotify or iTunes or anything like that. Rate, review, subscribe if you have not. I would appreciate every one of those. If you are interested in doing more, you can hit me up on the Insiders program down in the subtext. The link is down in the description down below, to where you can sign up for that. There's nothing there now, and there's not going to be anything there now for the next several weeks. But during football season, you can ask people. We were pretty active on that. And it's $5 a month, and I get every single penny of that. And I'm doing that in lieu of a GoFundMe. Obviously, evangelize this to your friends, this podcast to your friends. Get them involved with what's going on. We want to have fun following Ole Miss sports. That's what this channel is all about fun. And we are going to get ready for a football season that could be pretty good. Once football season hits, you are going to see this main show every day in the morning, just like it is now. This one is not going to change. The Loomers is going to be fine. We're going to do a postcast after every basketball and football game moving forward. And we're also probably going to try and figure out a way to do some sort of a wrap up on baseball as well next spring. We're also going to potentially add a third show that I can't talk about the programming formatting information on it. And whenever that happens, if that happens, we will have that to go along with the SEC squads and the extra videos that are pretty constantly on this account. This account, we are going to find a way and take this rehab, basically the 3 to 6 weeks that I am out, to figure out how to next level this channel. The first time I had to have brain surgery, because this is the second version of this surgery that I've had. I basically dreamed up this channel in itself. So I'm going to take 3 weeks to try and figure out how to make this next level better. You've seen the difference in our naming conventions. You've seen the difference in our thumbnails. We're always constantly tweaking and growing. So we'll see exactly how that goes. I do want to say thank you to everybody that has tuned in to me in the morning for the last 3 years. Fantastic. More is to come. I'm not going away, just taking a little hiatus. So we'll see exactly how that goes. But thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day and your go-to source for Ole Miss sports. We pride ourselves on offering the most comprehensive perspectives, which is why we're the #1 Ole Miss podcast. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft podcast with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. As your favorite collegiate players get ready for the next level, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every single day. Find Locked On Ole Miss, our Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Hotty toddy, everybody. Remember, analytics is just the old English word that means bad football. We'll see you tomorrow.